Tim Arnold, welcome back. It's so good to see you again, my friend. Welcome back. How you been?
Trent, it's great to be here. It's always an honor to be invited on a podcast like this, but to be invited back is just the next level. So I've been looking forward to this, looking forward to the conversation very much.
I have as well, and congratulations on the new book. We're going to talk a bit about that, but I think more macro. Some members of our audience and listeners have gotten a chance to get to know you through our previous podcast. And since we've worked together a little bit, I know you've gotten to do some one-to-one work, specifically in the nonprofit space. You also are no stranger to the nonprofit space as being a former leader there. So you've invested your entire leadership and collaboration with leaders on that, which I just really value. Your earlier work was called Lead with and the Power of Healthy Tension. And now and there's so much to our listeners. If you have not picked up that book, please do yourself a favor and read that. But Tim's built upon it now, and you're going to be doing a few volumes, but you're focusing on the area that sounds like it's most important. That's leading teams, right? So this new book called Next Level Teamwork, the 5 tensions to manage for high performance teams. And if I understand correctly, the volumes that you'll be investing in here start with teams. And then we talk about change and we'll talk about culture ultimately in these future volumes. But talk about these important themes and specifically as we then delve into the recent thinking that you're expounding upon in the book related to high performance teams. But first, talk to us a little bit about that arc,
Yeah, yeah. No, I want
high
to
level
take
output.
a different approach because I've been fortunate to get some books out there. And um, I have found as I talk to leaders, the pile on leaders' desks of books to read or back ordered or backlogged in their Kindle is
Yeah,
is is long, and I don't want to add to that. So at the same time, I know people are looking for really practical, actionable things that they can do to enhance the effectiveness of their organization. So I decided to take a bit of a different approach. So this Thriving Workplace series is a 3-volume, one per year series. Each one's really focused. So as you said, this first one's on kind of collaboration and teamwork. And the next one is specifically on leading change and change management. And the final one will be on a thriving workplace culture. But each one's only about 50 pages. I'm using the word playbook so that rather
that's
than
great.
spending a week or two reading, you can actually just dive right in and over the better part of 1 or 2 sit downs, grasp the book. But it's set up so that if you just take a few of the plays that I put in the book and put them into practice, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it's actually going to set you up for success. So the goal is really quick, practical, and hands on. And so far, I was able to send out some copies to leaders like yourself in advance, and it's been received really well. So this first one, Next Level Teamwork, just actually was released last week. And it's been an exciting time to actually be able to bring some new thoughts to organizations like the ones you reach out to.
One of the things I've always valued about your collaboration and your instruction, if you will, playbook's great because I think what's important, even as we talk today and for the benefit of our listeners, practical application is what it's all about. And I think, what I love about the new book in particular, and when you've been live, fantastic as well. Fantastic illustrations that when you've been thumb through things, it just jumps out. I think most leaders can say, we live in this tension, and when you can articulate it in an illustration that shows it and helps us to think about how does this become a win. Backing up one more click before we dive deep,
Sure.
you know, I think you and I have also discussed that pandemic now, it's late 2023, right? So pandemic seems like forever ago, but it really wasn't. But we're never really going to go back to the teams that we once had, right? Even with Pursuant earlier this year, we went through a merger and we're now 240 team members wide and all over the world, actually. It's not as if you're going to be combining offices and working out of cubes and being able to walk through. Many of my team members, I have not yet had the privilege to actually meet face to face. We have to lead differently. And with that, there's a new reality post pandemic. Teams need to be aligned in a certain way, and collaboration doesn't just naturally happen the way that it might have if you're opening up shop and hiring new employees that came to work in that office every day. We have dispersed teams. As our last kind of topic before we dive into the book specifically in those 5 tensions, how have you seen that evolve in the partnerships that you've been doing some consulting with as well?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I got into leadership development and organizational development actually on the team side of things. Way back, we're going to the late 90s. I was an outdoor adventure guide. So I took
Okay.
groups like yours outdoors and we did high ropes courses and paddling adventures, more the bonding side of things.
Uh-huh.
But I realized even at a young age that a lot of teams that I worked with, and you hear this more in lunchtime conversations or maybe at a reception after, a lot of teams are quite dysfunctional. And I would bet that almost everybody listening right now can think of a team that they've worked in where they've had a lot of dysfunction. I bet everyone listening can think of a person close to them right
Mm.
now that has left a job that they cared about, maybe even a profession they cared about because of their negative team experience. And as I was digging into research around this, I found that every study that I looked through pointed to the fact that actually the majority of teams, specifically here in North America, deal with ongoing dysfunction. And you know what was interesting? And this was actually before the pandemic. This was just at the end of the 2010s. About 7 in 10 workers, professionals, would say that if they could choose not to work in a team, they would, just because of their past
Wow.
experiences of drama and division and dysfunction.
7 and 10. Did I hear that right?
7
Seven.
out of 10, 7 out of 10.
Wow.
And what was interesting is that was before the pandemic. And
Huh.
now we have, an environment, as you say, where all of a sudden we are working in new ways, new types of technology, remote, hybrid, all these different kind of ways of working where you can working with talent pools sometimes that are in lots of different time zones. And I think we're realizing that although there's huge benefits and advantages that can come from that, teaming's never been more challenging.
Yep.
And you know what I would
Yep.
say to anyone who's listening, Trent, is you have to remember that just because a group of people happen to be in an org chart doesn't mean teamwork is happening.
Not at all.
Teamwork only happens if 1 + 1 = more than three. Otherwise, you just have independent contributors. And I've been in lots of organizations where 1 + 1 doesn't even equal three because of the drama and the division. So for teamwork to happen now, I think people are realizing, first of all, there isn't a magical formula out there. And although some people are making loud statements on their new reality, I think we're realizing we're all just figuring this out. That said, if we can get our head around the advantages that we're starting to take it to tap into since the pandemic, things like new technologies, new ways of working, new talent pools, tapping into the upsides of flexibility, but do that in a way that also ensures collaboration and alignment and a sense of belonging that actually attracts and retains good people. You have a competitive edge more than ever before. I started working on this book actually long before the pandemic, but it just felt like I had to get it out sooner than later because right now I just think it's so timely.
I couldn't agree more. I do think that, and more leaders, you're seeing the next generation of leaders become leaders during this. A couple years ago, I might have said unprecedented times. Now it's the new normal. And so as we're emerging with some new leaders who might not have been able to draw on the skill set of saying, every Monday, we're going to start our week by meeting in the conference room, all 12 of us, and we're going to kick our week off. Now that might be a virtual meeting, and then we go our separate ways and we're trying to do our work in between of all that. So I do think as we emerge the next generation of leaders, and then there's the more mature leaders that have been doing it for a while and doing it a lot of different ways, and now having to adapt new leadership styles with their emerging teams. So tension all around, absolutely. And let's go back then now and dive into the book, because I do think that the thesis as you're starting with is that most teams really don't work. And I don't think that's a shot at anybody. I think you're basically saying that we settle for dysfunction, and we kind of, the way I've interpreted Tim, and I want you to educate me a little bit. We might recognize the limitations, and we somehow then settle and say, because of the limitations, I might not be able to get out of my team the performance, the collaboration, the camaraderie, the execution, the accountability, the trust, the engagement, all the things that we'll dive into. So we settle. We can explain away, because of the circumstances, that being mediocre or dysfunctional is okay. Talk to
Mhm.
me a little bit about that as your kind of thesis for the book.
Yeah, I think that settling is actually a fair word to use because I think a lot of teams, if they're honest, aren't really teams. They're just groups. They're just
Yep.
people who happen to work for the same company or in the same area. But you're not really getting the synergy that comes from true teamwork. And what's devastating about that is beyond the fact that it actually allows the best work to happen. It allows your organization to be at a whole new level. If you look at the numbers, the biggest investment most organizations make is into their payroll. It's into their people.
Yeah,
And yet
absolutely.
we don't often think about, are we getting the full return on that? And that's more than just people delivering on their job. It's, are we tapping into the synergy that comes from people really aligning and collaborating and working well together? And sadly, too many organizations just aren't. Now, I can tell you this. I've worked with countless teams across the world, from small startups, for profits, not for profits. Spent 3 years working with weapons inspectors with the United Nations.
Mhm.
No one has figured it out. I have yet to work with anyone, including organizations that I've been leading, where it's, you know what, we've got it all done. We're good to go, full synergy. It's always a work in progress. There's always work to be done. I would say this though, at any given time, especially as a leader, you need to ask yourself, although we haven't figured it all out and there's no magical formulas, are we moving forward? Can I look at this quarter and say, you know what, we're tapping into more synergy than the last? There's more psychological safety and a sense of belonging than there was last season. You know what? I feel like we're really getting the best of each other or not. And I think that's the question I'd say to every single person who's listening right now. Do you feel, when you look at the season ahead, that you're stronger now than you were a season ago? And the goal, again, is just incrementally being committed to move forward. And if that happens, again, that energy is what kind of attracts people and engages people. And that's what we're looking for.
That's excellent. So you start your first tension as a theme that's pretty common, I think, in leadership, but one that is, I would say, probably the most important. That's trust.
Mm,
For those of us, I think, and I'd say that you would be too, Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team, or you go all the way back to lots of teachings along leadership. Trust is critically important. I think it's evolved to a point today that it's not only more important than other, particularly when you don't have the close relationship and the bonding that you can otherwise have. Or you talked about some of the work that you previously did. It might be to bring people together in a commonality that's beyond just the work that they do together. We don't get the opportunity to do that. So,
sure.
how can teams strike the right balance between focusing on the tasks that they need to do and nurturing the relationships to build trust within the teams efficiently? And I want to add a layer to that because I'm really interested in how they build those relationships, both down, sideways, and up. We're part of multiple teams. Let's talk about that first tension of focusing on tasks and relationships.
Yeah, and it would be worth mentioning to folks who haven't maybe worked with me or heard me speak before that when we say tension, you're generally talking about two kind of things that almost feel like opposites, but like breathing with inhaling and exhaling. One can't exist without the other. And I think when it comes to trust, trust actually has an underlying tension of, we will have a solid foundation of trust if we have both a strong relationship focus and a strong task focus. Now, it's interesting because going back to when I got into this work decades ago, we thought that if we're going to have a strong relationship focus, we had to take a 2-day retreat and do trust falls in the woods and hold hands. I don't think that's actually what you need to do. When it comes to having a strong relationship focus, it actually means that we need to know each other beyond job descriptions. Leadership philosopher Peter Block talks a lot about, we need connection before content. Without
Mhm.
relatedness, no real synergy can happen. And that means that although we're not going to always do 2-day retreats where we go to the woods, we do need to carve out time for connection. And in next level teamwork, I talk about, you can do that in ongoing, really simple ways. One thing that I would say daily is, even if you and I have a Zoom scheduled, or maybe you've got a team meeting, if you've got 30 minutes, carve out 3 or 4 for just connection. When sometimes it feels like you don't have time for it, but these are one of those things where you go slow to go fast. If you can get those 3 or 4 minutes to just go beyond how's everyone doing and ask a real question, or maybe do a not too corny, enjoyable icebreaker, something like that.
Yep.
The
Yep.
rest of the meeting will go more effectively. So just making
So
sure that
doing
there's
doing that up at the top of the meeting, you're saying, just to pull in
absolutely
a
just
different frame of mind. Yep.
something to, and it can be something simple. Hey, what was the highlight of everyone's weekend? What's
Right.
one thing that people are looking forward to in the season ahead? Just something. If it's one-on-one, it's checking in. Hey, what's going on in your life right now? But something to just, again, 2 or 3 minutes can make that whole half hour more productive. I would say weekly. And this is true whether you're a team of 2 or 200. You need to have something in your system, in your structure that celebrates wins. You need to, and that might be part of an ongoing stand up that already happens. It might be something that you do virtually through some sort of technology, but something where we can give a shout out to work that's been done. I have one team that I work with, and they do a weekly, they call it Share the Love. And it's when you can share the love to somebody in the team who helped you that week. So I'd say, hey, I'm going to share the love with Trent because of this is what he did for me. And they bounce back and forth. But it's just making sure that we recognize good stuff is happening and individuals are going above and beyond. And I think that even with remote and hybrid teams, once or twice a year, you do need to get together. Whenever possible, you
Yeah.
need to
I
carve
agree
out
with
some
that.
time. And actually, I have a CEO I work with that he's got for now 5 years in a row, one of the most rewarded cultures in Canadian companies. And his motto is relationships can't be built without wasting time together. And there's something to be said about that. So,
I like that.
Plato wisely said, you can learn more about people than in an hour of play than in a lifetime of conversation. Allow yourself to go beyond the agenda now and then to make those relationships happen. Now, that's the relationship side. On the task side, the one thing that I would just encourage everyone to be thinking about is just because your team would say they're busy doesn't necessarily mean they have a healthy task focus. Busy and productive are two different things. Busy and engaged are two different things. And when I was researching this chapter on trust through task and relationship, the task focus actually meant we are trusting that we are doing good work and fully engaged and committed. And as I looked through research that kind of differentiated between busy and productive, I would say that your team members need to all answer yes to three key questions. And they're pretty simple. The first one is everyone's got to individually be able to say, I'm clear on what my piece to this puzzle is. And I feel like I have what I need to deliver on that. And that could be the time, the people, the technology, but I know, and that's not just I have a job description. It's that I feel like I know what that looks like a week from now, a month from now. I'm clear on what my piece is. Second question, if we want a healthy focus on task, is that I believe that my teammates are committed and fully committed to delivering on their pieces. And you're probably not surprised by this, Trent, but one of the quickest ways to engage and motivate people is put them in a group of engaged and motivated people. One of
Yeah.
the quickest ways to suck the energy and life out of
See
star
that.
performers is put them in a group of mediocre performers. So the second thing is I know that not only do I know my piece, but my teammates are committed and they're delivering on their piece. And then the third question, we're going to have a really healthy task focus is individually and collectively, we can at any given time assess if we're winning or losing. And that's easy to do if you live in the world of sales or marketing. You got KPIs that are clear. But if you're maybe in HR or different types of service, knowing if we're winning or losing is trickier. And yet it's every bit as important. I
It
need to
really
know,
is.
are we actually moving things forward or not? If you deliver on both of those things, really invest in both relationship and task focus, the overall sense of trust in each other and commitment goes up.
So, if we wrap for the day, Tim, are there specifically to our nonprofit leaders and listeners today, are there some key takeaways or some things that they can apply effective immediately as they begin to think through these areas of tension?
Yeah, I go back actually, Trent, to where we started in that I am telling you based on my experience, no one has totally figured this out. Your team experiencing true teamwork and synergy is always a work in progress. But even if people put some of these plays that we talked about into practice right away, you will be able to move in the right direction. And that's the goal. It's interesting. What really pushed me to write this as the first volume of this 3-volume writing series is my wife was in a profession and a job that she loved for many years and was moved to a different team. And it was the first time in her career where she was in a really dysfunctional team and worked hard to do everything within her power to change it. But there isn't a lot of change that was happening. And sadly, I could see just that passion and spirit in her kind of go down. And it was interesting because she's in education and I have a daughter at the time. She was 8 and 9, and she was all about, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be an educator. And but a year into this role, one day my daughter just said, I don't think I'm going to be a teacher anymore. And we both were like, why? And she said, because it makes mommy sad. And
Wow.
it was just this reality that, you know what, we spend most of our waking hours at work during the week, and life's just too short to waste those hours in dysfunctional teams when it doesn't have to be that way. No team's perfect. There's always work to be done. But even in our family, that was the moment where my wife is, I got to make some changes. And again, you make some changes and you get into a more functional environment and you realize that when the team works, you have that sense of belonging. You feel like you can bring your best. You actually feel like you're getting the best from each other. And it just makes all the difference. I guess I would just encourage everyone that's listening to think about what is the kind of level of health of the team that you're in, whether it's 2 or 200 people, and what would be some simple but deliberate things that you could do moving forward to make sure that you're going in the right direction, that you're actually more aligned, not less aligned, that team members feel more safe with each other, not less safe, that ultimately you're allowing yourselves not just to be productive, but to have fun together and enjoy your work. And that's the hope. And next level teamwork is all about just supporting people as they do that.
I love that. Tim, what else can I do to promote you? Please tell the listeners what else they can do to sign up for your work, and where can they find your book today?
Oh, appreciate that very much. And it's been a privilege to be able to work with you and a lot of nonprofits that are listening. Yeah, leadersforleaders.ca or timarnold.ca will both take you to my work. The new book, Next Level Teamwork, is probably, if you look Next Level Teamwork, Tim Arnold, Amazon's the easiest place to get it. And there's information on the websites and the book on how I can support you and your organization. And again, tapping into this power of both and thinking and both more effective leadership in teams. And for those of you on social media, I seem to hang out the most on Instagram and LinkedIn. Just look up Tim Arnold Leadership and you'll probably find me there. But yeah, reach out. Anything that I've said today you want some more info on, reach out to me. I'd love to have a chat with anybody. But Trent, again, inviting me back, giving me the chance to talk about the work that I've been doing is an honor and it's fun. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. You're so impactful, and it's been a privilege to get to know you over the last few years. Anything we can do to continue to support you, we are always welcome to do. And listeners, do yourself a favor. At minimum, follow him on Instagram, because when you start getting a little drip with Tim Arnold, it'll start to play a lot in the effectiveness of your organization day by day. And if you so inclined feel the need to give him a hire and have him come in, he will make an undeniable impact in your organization. So Tim, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, my friend.
As do I. Thanks again.
All right.